Commander Zethkar of the Vorthak Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, watching the holographic display with barely concealed amusement. The small fleet of human vessels hung in space like scattered seeds before his mighty armada. His mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "Look at them," he chittered to his second-in-command, Subcommander Veltheros. "Barely 36 ships against our 500. Do these mammals truly believe they can stand against the might of the Vorthak Empire?" The bridge crew shared in their commander's mirth. The Vorthak had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade alone, their superior technology and ruthless efficiency making them the most feared military force in this sector of the galaxy. Each of their warships was 3 times the size of the largest human vessel, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that had never been breached in combat. Subcommander Veltheros examined the tactical readouts with his 4 compound eyes, his exoskeleton gleaming under the bridge's harsh lighting. "Intelligence reports indicate the humans call this the 3rd Colonial Defense Fleet, my lord. Their technology appears primitive by our standards. Chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons, and basic energy shielding." "Kinetic weapons?" Commander Zethkar's antennae twitched with derision. "Metal slugs fired from crude tubes? How quaint. I almost feel sorry for them." The human fleet had positioned itself between the Vorthak Armada and the agricultural world of Kepler 442b, one of humanity's newer colonies. The planet held little strategic value beyond its food production capabilities, but it served as an important stepping stone toward Earth itself. The Vorthak conquest plan was methodical and brutal. Crush each human outpost one by one, weakening their resolve and forcing them to surrender their homeworld without a costly siege. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," announced communications officer Kix Thrall from her station. "Put it through," Zethkar ordered, curious to hear what desperate plea or threat these primitives might offer. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of a human male in a dark blue uniform. His hair was gray at the temples, and his eyes held a steely determination that momentarily surprised the Vorthak commander. This was Admiral Marcus Chun, though Zethkar did not yet know the human's name or reputation. "This is Admiral Chun of the Terran Colonial Navy," the human said, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds he faced. "I'm calling to inform you that you have entered human-protected space without authorization. I am ordering you to withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The bridge erupted in clicking laughter. Commander Zethkar had to wipe moisture from his compound eyes before responding. "Human, I am Commander Zethkar of the glorious Vorthak Empire. You are outgunned, outmanned, and outclassed in every possible way. Surrender now, and I promise your deaths will be swift." Admiral Chin's expression didn't change. "Commander Zethkar, you've made 2 critical errors today. First, you've threatened innocent civilians under Terran protection. Second, you've clearly never heard of the phrase "cry havoc" and "let's slip the dogs of war." Dogs? Zethkar's translator struggled with the unfamiliar term. "What manner of creature is this dog of which you speak?" "You're about to find out," Chin replied before cutting the transmission. On the human flagship UTS Defiance, Admiral Chun turned to his communications officer. "Signal all ships. Initiate Protocol 77 Alpha. Release the war dogs." Lieutenant Sarah Morrison's fingers flew across her console. "Signal sent, Admiral. All ships acknowledging. War dog deployment in 3 minutes." Chin nodded grimly. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the Vorthak had left him no choice. The war dogs were humanity's most closely guarded secret, a program developed in the deepest black sites of military research. Even most of the colonial navy didn't know they existed. Across the human fleet, cargo bay doors began to open with mechanical precision. From each ship emerged objects that defied easy categorization. They were roughly the size of fighter craft, but moved with an organic fluidity that seemed almost alive. Their hulls were matte black, absorbing light and sensor signals making them difficult to track on conventional instruments. Aboard the Crimson Talon, sensor technician Vexmoller watches displays with growing confusion. "Commander, I'm detecting multiple small objects deploying from the human fleet, but they're not registering as typical fighter craft. Their energy signatures are unusual." Commander Zethkar leaned forward in his command chair. "Unusual how?" "They appear to be broadcasting on biological frequencies, sir. Almost as if they were living organisms rather than mechanical constructs." "Impossible veltaros interjected." No known technology can blur the line between organic and mechanical to such a degree. The war dogs spread out in a complex formation, their movements synchronized yet seemingly chaotic, like a pack of predators surrounding their prey. Each unit was approximately 20 meters in length, sleek, and predatory in design. Their surfaces rippled with barely visible energy patterns that pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the research vessel Mendel, one of 3 science ships accompanying the defense fleet. As the head of the War Dog Project, she felt a mixture of pride and trepidation as her creations prepared for their first combat deployment. "Telemetry is clean across all units," reported her assistant, Dr. James Park. "Neural link integrity is holding at 98%. The pack is ready for engagement." Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Signal the lead Alpha. Hunting parameters are set to maximum aggression. Rules of engagement are weapons-free." The lead war dog, designated Alpha 1, received the transmission through quantum-entangled neurons that bridge the gap between biological instinct and mechanical precision. Deep within its hybrid neural core, genetic memories of Earth's most successful predators merged with cutting-edge artificial intelligence. The result was something that was neither fully alive nor entirely mechanical, but possessed the best qualities of both. Alpha 1's consciousness, if it could be called that, was alien even to its human creators. It thought in hunting patterns and pack dynamics, its primary directive burned into its very essence. Protect the pack, protect the humans, destroy the threat. It could smell fear across the vacuum of space, sense the electromagnetic signatures of enemy ships like blood in the water. The Vorthak fleet began to advance, their massive ships moving in traditional battle formation. Their commanders had faced countless alien species across the galaxy, and all had fallen before their overwhelming technological superiority. They saw no reason why these humans would be any different. "Target the largest human vessels first," ordered Commander Zethkar. "Once their command structure is broken, the rest will scatter like frightened insects." The Vorthak opened fire with their plasma cannons, brilliant streams of superheated gas streaking across space toward the human fleet. The human ships' shields flared as they absorbed the impacts, several vessels already showing signs of damage from the first salvo. But the war dogs had been waiting for this moment. Alpha 1 released a subsonic pulse that traveled through space via quantum resonance, a hunting cry that activated dormant instincts in its pack mates. Across the formation, 97 other war dogs received the signal and responded with predatory eagerness. They accelerated toward the Vorthak fleet with impossible speed, their hybrid propulsion systems combining conventional thrust with biotechnological enhancements that allowed them to move like living creatures through space. Their hulls rippled and shifted, adaptive camouflage, making them nearly invisible against the starfield backdrop. "Commander," Vexmoller's voice carried a note of panic. "The small craft are moving at incredible speed. They're accelerating past anything our databases show as possible for vessels their size." Zethkar watched the tactical display with growing unease. The objects moved not in straight lines like conventional fighters, but in flowing organic patterns that reminded him uncomfortably of hunting predators from his homeworld. "What are their weapon signatures?" "That's just it, sir. I'm not detecting any conventional weapons at all. No energy projectors, no missile tubes, no visible armament of any kind." The first war dog reached the outer perimeter of the Vorthak fleet and did something that defied all tactical doctrine. Instead of opening fire from a safe distance, It dove directly toward the hull of a Vorthack destroyer, the Saber's Edge. The ship's point defense systems opened fire, but the war dog moved with such fluid grace that the automated targeting systems couldn't achieve a lock. Captain Morthack of the Saber's Edge watched in disbelief as the strange craft approached his ship. All weapons, concentrate fire on that target. It's heading straight for us. But the war dog was no longer where their sensors indicated it should be. At the last possible moment, it seemed to phase partially through the destroyer's shields, its hybrid nature allowing it to briefly exist in a quantum state between matter and energy. It struck the hull with a sound that reverberated through the ship's structure like the tolling of a funeral bell. The impact should have destroyed the small craft against the heavily armored hull of the destroyer. Instead, something impossible happened. The war dog's hull flowed like liquid metal, forming a perfect seal around the point of contact. Molecular boring tools, guided by predatory instincts older than civilization, began to eat through the Vorthack ship's armor like acid through flesh. "Hull breach on Deck 7, screamed the damage control officer aboard the Saber's Edge. "Something has penetrated our armor and is moving through the ship." Captain Morthack felt his blood chill. Nothing could breach Vorthack armor without massive explosive force. Their ships were designed to withstand direct hits from plasma cannons and nuclear weapons. "What do you mean moving through the ship?" The answer came in the form of screams echoing through the communication channels. The war dog had released smaller units once it penetrated the hull, nanoscale predators that hunted with mechanical precision and biological ruthlessness. They sought out critical systems and began to devour them from within, growing larger and more aggressive with each component they consumed. Meanwhile, more war dogs had reached other vessels in the Vorthack formation. Their attack patterns defied conventional military logic. They moved like a coordinated hunting pack, each unit supporting the others with an instinctive understanding of pack dynamics. When one war dog engaged a target, others would position themselves to cut off escape routes or provide flanking attacks. The Vorthack crews fought back with everything they had, but their weapons were designed to fight conventional spacecraft, not these hybrid predator machines that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Energy beams passed harmlessly through war dogs that had shifted into quantum states, while kinetic weapons found no purchase on hulls that flowed like water. Subcommander Veltharos watched the tactical display with growing horror as red warning indicators began to cascade across his screen. "Commander, we're losing ships. The Saber's Edge has gone dark, and the Void Hunter is reporting massive internal damage. How is this possible?" Commander Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "Order all ships to withdraw to maximum engagement range. We'll destroy these creatures with massed plasma bombardment." But the war dogs anticipated this retreat. Their pack behavior included sophisticated herding instincts that allowed them to drive prey into killing zones. As the Vorthack ships attempted to withdraw, the war dogs moved to funnel them into a tighter formation where their own plasma weapons would risk hitting friendly vessels. Alpha 1 had successfully penetrated 3 separate ships, leaving behind self-replicating hunter-killers that would continue to grow and multiply until their host vessels were completely consumed from within. It turned its attention to the command ship, the massive Crimson Talon, its hybrid senses detecting the concentration of command pheromones that marked it as the alpha vessel of the enemy pack. The war dog accelerated towards target, but the flagship was protected by layers of defensive fire that even its advanced capabilities couldn't easily penetrate. Alpha 1 released another subsonic pulse, calling for pack support. 7 other war dogs immediately responded, converging on the flagship in a coordinated assault that divided the defensive fire among multiple targets. As the battle raged around them, the human fleet maintained their position, protecting the colony below while their secret weapons tore into the Vorthack formation like wolves among sheep. Admiral Chun watched the displays with grim satisfaction. The war dogs were performing exactly as designed, but he felt no joy in their effectiveness. These creatures represented both humanity's greatest triumph and its darkest creation. On the research vessel Mendel, Dr. Vasquez monitored the neural link data flowing from the war dogs. The hybrid creatures were learning and adapting with each encounter, their artificial intelligence components processing Vorthack tactics while their biological instincts refined their hunting strategies. They were becoming more effective with each passing minute. Neural activity is spiking across the entire pack, Dr. Park reported. They're exhibiting classic predator behavior patterns. The thrill of the hunt is activating their reward systems. Elena felt a chill despite the warm bridge environment. The war dogs were enjoying this. Whatever spark of consciousness existed within their hybrid minds found satisfaction in the destruction of their enemies. She wondered, not for the first time, if humanity had created saviors or monsters. The battle was entering its most critical phase. The Vorthack formation was in chaos, their ships scattered and many already compromised by the relentless assault of the war dogs. But Commander Zethkar was not ready to admit defeat. His pride as a Vorthack warrior and the reputation of his empire hung in the balance. All remaining ships formed defensive sphere around the flagship, he ordered. Channel all power to weapons and shields. We make our stand here. The surviving Vorthack vessels, now numbering fewer than 300, pulled into a tight defensive formation around the Crimson Talon. Their plasma cannons began to fire in synchronized patterns, creating overlapping fields of deadly energy that even the war dogs couldn't easily penetrate. But Alpha One had learned much about Vorthack tactics in the past hour of combat. Its hybrid mind processed the defensive pattern and found the weakness that pure artificial intelligence might have missed. The Vorthack were thinking like prey animals now, clustering together for protection. This activated hunting instincts coded into Alpha One's genetic memory, behaviors learned over millions of years of evolution by Earth's most successful pack hunters. The lead war dog began to circle the Vorthack formation, staying just outside their effective range while releasing chemical markers that would be undetectable to the aliens but would signal the rest of the pack. It was setting up for the killing stroke, the final coordinated assault that would bring down the alpha of the enemy pack and scatter the rest. As the first part of this deadly encounter drew to a close, both sides prepared for the decisive phase of the battle. The Vorthack had learned too late that they were not facing mere machines or primitive weapons. They were facing something that blended the cold efficiency of advanced technology with the primal savagery of biological predators. The war dogs had tasted blood, and their hunt was far from over. The defensive sphere around the Crimson Talon pulsed with deadly energy as the remaining Vorthack fleet concentrated their firepower. Commander Zethkar watched his tactical display with the desperate focus of a predator that had suddenly found itself transformed into prey. 17 of his ships had gone silent in the past 30 minutes, their crews either dead or fighting losing battles against the nightmare creatures that had somehow penetrated their hulls. "Status report," he demanded, his voice carrying the sharp edge of barely controlled panic. Subcommander Veltheros consulted his readings with trembling manipulator appendages. 273 ships remaining in formation, sir. Hull integrity on all vessels holding above 80%. The defensive pattern is keeping those things at bay for now. The war dogs continued their relentless circling, like sharks sensing blood in the water. Their movements had taken on an even more predatory quality as they learned from each engagement. Alpha One led the pack in a complex orbital pattern around the Vorthack formation, occasionally darting inward to test the defensive fire before withdrawing just beyond effective range. Aboard the human flagship UTS Defiance, Admiral Chun monitored the battle with growing concern. While the war dogs were performing magnificently, each minute of delay allowed the Vorthack more time to analyze their capabilities and potentially develop countermeasures. More importantly, he was receiving increasingly urgent messages from the colony below. "Admiral," Communications Officer Morrison reported, "Governor Williams is requesting immediate assistance planetside." Long-range sensors are detecting Vorthack drop ships that bypassed our perimeter during the initial engagement. Chen's jaw tightened. It was a classic Vorthack tactic. While their main fleet engaged the defenders, smaller forces would slip past to begin ground operations. How many ships made it through? Estimated 40 to 50 vessels, sir. They're already deploying ground forces in 3 major population centers. The admiral found himself facing an impossible choice. He could order some of the war dogs to disengage and provide planetary support, but that would weaken their assault on the main fleet. Alternatively, he could try to break through the Vorthack formation with conventional forces, but that would likely result in massive casualties among his own ships. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been monitoring the tactical situation from her position on the research vessel Mendel. Through the neural link, she could sense Alpha One's growing impatience with the stalemate. The lead war dog understood on an instinctive level that the longer the hunt dragged on, the more likely it was that the prey would find a way to escape or call for reinforcements. Dr. Vasquez, her assistant DR, Park called urgently. I'm detecting unusual neural patterns from the war dogs. They're communicating with each other on frequencies we've never recorded before. Elena moved to his station and examined the data streams flowing across his screen. The patterns were unlike anything in their database. Complex, layered communications that seemed to convey not just tactical information, but emotional states and instinctive responses. They're evolving their communication protocols in real time. The biological components are adapting faster than we predicted. The implications were staggering. The war dogs weren't just following programmed behaviors anymore. They were developing their own pack dynamics and hunting strategies based on the specific circumstances of this battle. They had become, in a very real sense, a new form of life. Alpha One suddenly broke from its circling pattern and accelerated directly toward the Vorthack formation. But instead of targeting the nearest ship, it made an unexpected course correction that took it toward a specific vessel, the heavy cruiser Death Shadow, positioned at a critical junction in the defensive sphere. The Vorthack concentrated their fire on the approaching war dog, streams of plasma converging on its position with deadly precision. But Alpha One had learned to read the energy patterns of their weapons, and its hybrid nervous system could process targeting solutions faster than any purely mechanical computer. It weaved through the barrage with impossible grace, its hull flickering between solid matter and quantum flux as it approached its target. Captain Corveth of the Death Shadow watched the approaching nightmare with a mixture of fear and determination. All weapons, continuous fire. Do not let that thing reach us. But Alpha One wasn't planning a conventional assault. As it closed the final distance to the cruiser, it released a burst of quantum-entangled particles that passed through the ship's shields as if they didn't exist. The particles carried encoded information that activated dormant protocols hidden within Alpha One's biological components. The war dogs suddenly split apart. What had appeared to be a single craft revealed itself to be a cluster of smaller entities held together by quantum cohesion fields. 7 separate hunter units detached from the main body and attacked the Death Shadow from multiple angles simultaneously. Each unit was the size of a fighter craft, but moved with the coordinated precision of a single organism. The Vorthack point defense systems, designed to track single large targets, couldn't cope with the sudden multiplication of threats. 3 of the hunter units penetrated the ship's defenses and began their deadly work of boring through the hull, while the others engaged nearby vessels that tried to provide support fire. Hull breaches on multiple decks, screamed the damage control officer aboard the Death Shadow. Whatever those things are, they're moving through the ship like living creatures. Captain Corveth felt his exoskeleton bristle with terror as he realized the horrible truth. These weren't just machines built to look like living things. They were living things that incorporated mechanical components. They hunted with biological instincts and mechanical precision, combining the worst aspects of both into something that defied all conventional military doctrine. The destruction of the Death's Shadow sent shockwaves through the remaining Vorthack formation. If their defensive sphere could be penetrated so easily, nowhere was safe. Several ship captains began to consider withdrawal, despite their orders to hold position. Commander Zethkar sensed the wavering morale of his fleet and knew he had to act decisively. All ships, implement Protocol Omega-7. Prepare for plasma saturation bombardment. Protocol Omega-7 was a desperate last resort that involved detonating the plasma cores of selected ships to create massive energy explosions. The resulting radiation and debris field would hopefully destroy or disable the war dogs, though it would also mean sacrificing a significant portion of his remaining fleet. Sub-Commander Veltheros hesitated. Sir, Protocol Omega-7 will cost us at least 50 ships. The crews serve the Empire, Zethkar replied coldly. Better to sacrifice 50 ships than lose the entire fleet to these abominations. But Alpha One's enhanced senses detected the energy buildup that preceded plasma core detonation. Through the quantum link, it communicated this threat to the rest of the pack in a burst of biochemical signals that conveyed urgency and tactical adaptation. The war dogs immediately adjusted their formation, preparing for the coming explosion while positioning themselves to take advantage of the chaos. When the Vorthack detonated 50 of their own ships, the resulting explosions lit up space like newborn stars. The expanding spheres of superheated plasma and exotic radiation would have instantly vaporized any conventional spacecraft caught within their radius. Even the remaining Vorthack ships suffered significant damage from the controlled detonations, their shields strained to the breaking point by the massive energy release. For a moment, the Vorthack commanders allowed themselves to hope. Surely nothing could survive such devastation. But as the sensors cleared and the radiation levels dropped to manageable levels, they discovered the horrible truth. The war dogs had not only survived, they had used the explosions to mask their movements and penetrate deeper into the Vorthack formation. Like sharks feeding in bloody water, they had taken advantage of the chaos to position themselves for maximum effect. Alpha One materialized from the dissipating plasma cloud directly above the Crimson Talon, its hull glowing with absorbed radiation that it was already converting into usable energy through its hybrid biological systems. The flagship's shields flared as the war dog descended toward them, but Alpha One had learned to phase shift its quantum structure in ways that allowed it to partially bypass conventional energy barriers. Emergency maneuvers. Zitkar shouted. All batteries, concentrate fire on that target. The Crimson Talon was the most heavily armed vessel in the Vorthack fleet, mounting weapons capable of cracking small moons. The barrage directed at Alpha One would have reduced a conventional warship to subatomic particles. But the war dog was no longer bound by the limitations of conventional matter. It flowed around the energy beams like liquid lightning, its hybrid form shifting between states of matter as needed. When solid projectiles threatened to impact it, the creature became partially gaseous. When energy weapons locked onto its position, it shifted into quantum flux and existed temporarily outside normal space-time. The other war dogs pressed their assault on the remaining Vorthack ships with renewed fury. Without the protective envelope of the destroyed vessels, the formation's defensive geometry collapsed. Ships found themselves isolated and vulnerable, picked off one by coordinated attacks that exploited every weakness in their design. On the colony world below, the battle was taking a different but equally desperate turn. Vorthack ground forces had landed in 3 major cities and were systematically eliminating civilian populations according to their standard conquest protocols. Their energy weapons and powered armor made them nearly invincible against human colonial defense forces. Governor Sarah Williams coordinated the evacuation efforts from the Emergency Command Center deep beneath New Geneva, the colony's capital city. Reports flooding in from around the planet painted a grim picture of methodical slaughter and destruction. Ma'am, her aide Captain Rodriguez reported, Vorthack forces have overrun the agricultural processing centers in sectors 7 and 12. They're using some kind of biological weapon that's contaminating the soil itself. Williams felt a sick certainty that this was more than just conquest. It was attempted genocide. The Vorthak were ensuring that even if they were eventually driven off, the colony world would be uninhabitable for generations. What's our ETA on military support from the fleet? Admiral Chin's forces are still engaged with the main Vorthak fleet in orbit. No word on when they'll be able to provide ground support. High above the planet, Alpha One had finally reached the hull of the Crimson Talon. But instead of immediately beginning its penetration assault, the war dog paused, its hybrid senses detecting something unusual about the flagship's construction. Deep within the ship's core, it sensed the presence of something that triggered ancient predatory instincts coded into its biological components. There was another predator aboard this vessel. Commander Zethkar had retreated to the ship's most heavily defended compartment, surrounded by his elite guard units. But he was not cowering in fear. He was preparing to release the Vorthak Empire's own secret weapon. Deep in the bowels of the Crimson Talon, in a containment facility that had required the sacrifice of 3 entire star systems to construct, something stirred in response to the approaching threat. "Initiate Project Devourer," Zethkar commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The containment seals began to retract with ominous mechanical precision. What emerged from the depths of the ship was the product of Vorthak genetic engineering and cybernetic enhancement, a fusion of their own predatory instincts with the most advanced technology their empire could create. If the humans had their war dogs, the Vorthak had their own equally terrible answer. The creature that emerged was larger than any war dog, its form a nightmarish fusion of organic chitinous armor and mechanical weapon systems. It moved with the fluid grace of a natural predator, but possessed firepower equivalent to a heavy cruiser. Most terrifyingly, it had been specifically designed to hunt and destroy biotech hybrids like the war dogs. Alpha One sensed the emergence of this rival predator and released a quantum pulse warning to the rest of its pack. For the first time since the battle began, the war dogs faced an enemy that matched them in both technological sophistication and predatory instinct. The stage was set for a confrontation between 2 different philosophies of warfare: humanity's fusion of technology with Earth's most successful predators, and the Vorthak Empire's answer born from their own evolutionary heritage. The battle was about to enter its most savage phase. As Project Devourer emerged from the depths of the flagship and began its hunt for Alpha One, the other war dogs found themselves facing coordinated resistance for the first time. The remaining Vorthak fleet, though reduced to fewer than 200 ships, had learned to work together against the hybrid predators. They had discovered that concentrated fire from multiple vessels could disrupt the quantum coherence that allowed the war dogs to phase shift. But the war dogs were adapting as well. Their biological components allowed them to evolve countermeasures in real time, while their pack dynamics ensured that tactical innovations discovered by one individual were immediately shared with the entire group. The battle had become an evolutionary arms race compressed into minutes instead of millennia. Dr. Vasquez watched the neural pattern displays with growing alarm. The stress on their hybrid systems is enormous. Some of the war dogs are showing signs of cascade failure in their biological components. Dr. Park nodded grimly. The quantum phase shifting is putting incredible strain on their cellular structure. They weren't designed for extended combat operations at this intensity level. Elena realized that they were pushing the war dogs beyond their design limitations. The creatures were giving everything they had to protect the human fleet and the colony below, but there were limits to what even their advanced hybrid systems could endure. If the battle dragged on much longer, they risked losing their most valuable assets to simple exhaustion. But Alpha One seemed to understand this as well. Its next actions would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but the future of both species in this sector of space. The lead war dog prepared for its most dangerous gambit yet, a direct confrontation with the Vorthak Empire's ultimate predator in the confined spaces of the enemy flagship. The hunt was entering its final phase, and only one apex predator would emerge victorious. Project Devourer emerged from the depths of the Crimson Talon like a nightmare given form. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, its body was an intricate fusion of Vorthack biological engineering and their most advanced cybernetic enhancements. Chitinous armor plates shifted and flowed across its frame, powered by synthetic muscles that could exert pressure measured in tons per square inch. Its multiple limbs ended in weapon systems that had been grown rather than manufactured, each one capable of adapting its ammunition type and firing pattern based on the target's vulnerabilities. Alpha 1 sensed the creature's emergence before it had fully cleared the containment bay. Through the quantum entanglement that linked all war dogs, it immediately shared tactical data about this new threat with its packmates. But even as it did so, Alpha 1 felt something it had never experienced before: uncertainty. Its hybrid consciousness, part biological predator and part artificial intelligence, struggled to categorize this opponent that seemed to exist in the same evolutionary niche as itself. Commander Zethkar watched through internal sensors as his Empire's ultimate weapon stalked through the corridors of his flagship. Project Devourer moved with deadly purpose, its multiple sensory organs tracking the electromagnetic signature of the intruding war dog. Unlike the crude mechanical constructs the Vorthack had expected to face, this creature possessed instincts honed by millions of years of evolution on a world where only the most efficient killers survived. Devourer has acquired the target, reported weapons officer Thex Moran from his monitoring station. Biomechanical integration is optimal. All systems show peak performance parameters. The Vorthack had learned harsh lessons from their conquest of other star systems. Too often, they had relied purely on technological superiority, only to discover that some species possessed biological advantages that could overcome even their most advanced weapons. Project Devourer represented their solution, a fusion of their own predatory heritage with technology specifically designed to hunt and kill biotech hybrids. Deep within the Crimson Talon, Alpha 1 began its own hunt. The ship's corridors were designed for Vorthack physiology, forcing the war dog to compress its form to navigate the narrow passages. But this limitation was offset by its ability to phase partially through solid matter when necessary, allowing it to take shortcuts through the ship's structure that no conventional boarding party could utilize. The two apex predators circled each other through the maze of the flagship's interior, each using sophisticated sensors to track their opponent's movements. Alpha 1's hybrid nature allowed it to detect chemical traces and electromagnetic signatures, while Project Devourer relied on quantum field fluctuations and bioelectric emanations to locate its prey. Their first encounter came in the ship's primary engineering section, a vast chamber filled with the humming machinery that powered the Vorthack vessel. Alpha 1 materialized through a bulkhead, its form shifting from quantum flux to solid matter with fluid grace. It found itself face to face with Project Devourer, and for a moment that lasted only microseconds, both predators assessed each other. Project Devourer struck first, its limbs extending projectiles that weren't quite bullets and weren't quite living organisms. The ammunition adapted its structure during flight, shifting from armor-piercing configurations to explosive payloads based on real-time analysis of the target's defensive capabilities. Alpha 1 twisted away from the barrage, its hull flickering between states of matter to avoid the adaptive projectiles. The war dog responded with its own assault, releasing a swarm of nanoscale hunter-killers that sought out critical systems within Project Devourer's hybrid frame. But the Vorthack creation had been specifically designed to resist such attacks. Its chitinous armor secreted defensive compounds that neutralized the nanopredators before they could penetrate its outer shell. The battle between the two creatures raged through the engineering section, their movements so fast and violent that the surrounding machinery suffered catastrophic damage. Power conduits exploded in showers of sparks, while structural supports groaned under the impact of forces that exceeded their design limitations. Meanwhile, The space battle continued to rage around the crippled Vorthack formation. The remaining war dogs pressed their assault with mechanical precision, but they were beginning to show signs of the prolonged combat stress that Dr. Vasquez had warned about. Several units had suffered cascade failures in their biological components, forcing them to operate on purely mechanical systems that lacked the adaptability that made them so effective. Beta 7, one of the pack's most aggressive hunters, found itself engaged with a Vorthack heavy cruiser whose crew had learned to predict its phase-shifting patterns. The ship's weapons fired in overlapping sequences designed to catch the war dog regardless of which quantum state it occupied. Beta 7 took several direct hits before managing to penetrate the cruiser's defenses, its hybrid hull showing severe damage from the encounter. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display with growing concern. Signal all war dogs to begin withdrawal protocols. They're pushing themselves beyond safe operational limits. Dr. Vasquez shook her head from her position on the research vessel. Admiral, they won't respond to withdrawal orders while Alpha 1 is still engaged. Their pack dynamics won't allow them to abandon the lead hunter. Then, we need to provide support, Chin decided. All ships advance to assault formation. We're going to punch through their defensive line and extract our people. The human fleet began to move forward, their conventional weapons adding their firepower to the assault on the Vorthack formation. But their ships were taking heavy damage from the concentrated plasma fire, and Chin knew they couldn't sustain the advance for long. On the colony world below, the situation was growing increasingly desperate. Governor Williams received reports that Vorthack ground forces had systematically eliminated the populations of 2 smaller settlements, and were advancing on New Geneva itself. The Colonial Defense Forces, equipped with weapons designed for law enforcement rather than military action, were being systematically slaughtered. Ma'am, Captain Rodriguez reported grimly, the evacuation transports from Sectors 4 and 5 have gone silent. We have to assume they've been destroyed. Williams felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. Hundreds of thousands of colonists depended on her decisions, and every choice seemed to lead to greater loss of life. What's the status of the emergency bunkers? Most civilian populations have reached the underground facilities, but the Vorthack have some kind of scanning technology that can detect life signs through several meters of rock and metal. The bunkers will only delay the inevitable. High above in the orbital battle, Alpha 1 found itself locked in mortal combat with Project Devourer in the Crimson Talon's command section. The Vorthack creature had proven to be a cunning adversary, adapting its tactics as quickly as the war dog could develop new strategies. Both predators bore the scars of their encounter, their hybrid systems pushed to the breaking point by the intensity of their battle. Project Devourer's latest gambit involved releasing a cloud of adaptive nanites that could track Alpha 1 even when it phase-shifted into quantum flux. The microscopic hunters forced the war dog to remain in solid form, making it vulnerable to direct attacks while limiting its mobility options. Alpha 1 responded by accessing genetic memories buried deep within its biological components, instincts inherited from Earth's apex predators that had survived by adapting to any environment. Instead of trying to escape the nanite cloud, it began to feed on it, converting the hostile nanites into components for its own biological systems. This was adaptation beyond anything the Vorthack had anticipated. Their creature had been designed to hunt biotech hybrids, but Alpha 1 was demonstrating evolutionary capabilities that defied their understanding of what was possible. Commander Zethkar watched the internal battle through security monitors with growing alarm. Both creatures were causing massive damage to his flagship systems, but Project Devourer seemed to be losing ground to its opponent's unexpected adaptability. Sir, Subcommander Voltheros reported urgently. We're receiving distress calls from the ground forces. They're requesting immediate orbital bombardment support. Denied, Zethkar replied without hesitation. We cannot spare any vessels from the main engagement. The ground forces will have to complete their mission without support. But the Vorthack ground commander, General Kexthor, had already made the decision that orbital support was essential for mission success. The human colonists had proven more resourceful than expected, using their knowledge of the local terrain to conduct guerrilla operations that were taking a significant toll on Vorthack forces. 3 human civilians had used improvised explosives to destroy a Vorthack command post, while a group of agricultural workers had somehow managed to turn their industrial equipment into effective weapons. The conquest that should have been a simple extermination operation was turning into a prolonged campaign that the Vorthack were not equipped to handle. All units fall back to defensive positions, General Kexthor ordered. Prepare for extended siege operations until orbital support becomes available. The Vorthack ground forces began to consolidate their positions around the major population centers, but they were surprised to discover that the human colonists were not content to simply wait for rescue. Small groups of civilians, led by former military personnel and local security officers, began conducting raids against Vorthack supply lines and communication arrays. Maria Santos, a former Terra Marine who had retired to the agricultural colony to raise her family, found herself leading a group of 40 volunteers in an assault on a Vorthack ammunition depot. Using knowledge gained from 20 years of military service, she had turned farmers and shopkeepers into an effective guerrilla force. "Remember," she whispered to her team as they prepared for their attack, "the Vorthack expect us to cower and hide. Let's show them what humans do when someone threatens our children." The attack on the depot succeeded beyond their expectations. The improvised explosive devices they had constructed from agricultural chemicals proved devastatingly effective against Vorthack equipment, while their hit-and-run tactics prevented the aliens from bringing their superior firepower to bear. But Maria knew that individual victories would not be enough. The colonists needed to buy time for the fleet to break through the orbital defenses and provide support. Every hour they could delay the Vorthack ground operation was another hour for their families to reach safety. Back in space, the battle between Alpha 1 and Project Devourer reached its climax in the Crimson Talon's central command chamber. Commander Zethkar had been forced to evacuate the bridge as the 2 apex predators tore through the ship's superstructure in their deadly dance. Project Devourer had managed to corner Alpha 1 in a section of the ship where phase shifting would be impossible due to quantum dampening fields. The Vorthack creature prepared for what it calculated would be the killing stroke, its weapons systems charging for a concentrated barrage that would overwhelm its opponent's defensive capabilities. But Alpha 1 had one final adaptation available to it. Deep within its hybrid consciousness, genetic memories from humanity's most successful pack hunters provided the key to survival. Instead of trying to fight Project Devourer directly, it began to howl. The sound was unlike anything ever heard aboard a Vorthack vessel, a quantum-resonant call that pierced through the ship's hull and reached across space to every other war dog in the battle. It was a hunting cry that spoke directly to the biological components of their hybrid nature, a call for the pack to unite against a common threat. 97 war dogs responded to their alpha's call. They disengaged from their individual battles and converged on the Crimson Talon with single-minded purpose. The remaining Vorthack ships tried to intercept them, but the war dogs moved with the coordinated precision of a true pack now, each individual unit supporting the others as they fought their way toward their trapped leader. Beta 7, despite its damaged systems, was the first to reach the flagship. It struck the hull with such force that the impact reverberated through the entire ship, its damaged but functional boring systems beginning to carve a path toward Alpha 1's position. Within minutes, 6 more war dogs had joined the assault, their combined effort threatening to tear the massive ship apart. Commander Zethkar realized that his flagship was doomed. All hands abandoned ship. Implement scuttling protocols. But it was too late for an orderly evacuation. The war dogs had reached Project Devourer's position, and the Vorthack creature found itself facing not one opponent, but 8. Even with its advanced capabilities, it could not fight an entire pack of apex predators simultaneously. The final battle was mercifully brief. Project Devourer fought with the desperate fury of a cornered predator, its weapons systems carving deep wounds in several war dogs before Alpha 1 delivered the killing stroke. The Vorthack creature's hybrid systems failed catastrophically, its death throes causing secondary explosions throughout the flagship's damaged superstructure. As the Crimson Talon began to break apart around them, the war dogs extracted themselves from the dying ship and regrouped in space. Alpha One's hull showed extensive battle damage, but its hybrid systems were already beginning the healing process that would restore full functionality within hours. The Vorthack fleet, witnessing the destruction of their flagship and the death of their ultimate weapon, finally broke. The remaining ships scattered in all directions, their crews no longer willing to face the nightmare predators that had emerged from humanity's darkest scientific research. But the battle was not yet over. The Vorthack ground forces were still on the planet below, and the war dogs' next target would be the most challenging environment they had yet faced. The pack prepared for planetfall, their hunting instincts focused on a new type of prey, ground-based opponents who could use terrain and fortifications to their advantage. The final phase of the battle was about to begin, and the colonists below were about to witness firsthand why humanity's enemies had learned to fear the war dogs. The war dogs descended through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b like falling stars, their hybrid hulls glowing with re-entry heat that their biological components converted into usable energy. Alpha One led the pack in a spiraling descent toward New Geneva, where the largest concentration of Vorthack ground forces had established their siege perimeter around the civilian population. General Kex Thor watched the approaching objects through his command post sensors with growing unease. His forces had been monitoring the space battle overhead, and the sudden disappearance of the Vorthack fleet signals did not bode well for their mission. Now these unknown craft were heading directly for his position. Analysis of the incoming objects, he demanded from his intelligence officer. Unknown configuration, General. They appear to be small craft, possibly fighter-class vessels. But their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They're broadcasting on biological frequencies similar to living organisms. General Kex Thor's mandibles clicked with irritation. First, the space fleet had failed to maintain orbital supremacy, and now he faced unknown enemies while trying to complete his extermination orders. All ground units, prepare for air assault, deploy anti-aircraft batteries, and establish defensive perimeters. The Vorthack had positioned themselves in fortified compounds throughout the city, using their advanced energy weapons and powered armor to maintain control over key strategic points. Their plan had been systematic and efficient, eliminate civilian population sector by sector while preventing any organized resistance from forming. But the arrival of the war dogs changed everything. Alpha One struck the ground outside the Vorthack command compound with tremendous force, its hybrid body absorbing the kinetic energy and immediately channeling it into enhanced mobility systems. The creature that emerged from the impact crater bore little resemblance to the sleek spacecraft that had descended from orbit. Its form had reconfigured itself for terrestrial combat, extending limbs designed for high-speed pursuit across varied terrain. The Vorthack soldiers opened fire immediately, their plasma rifles sending streams of superheated gas toward the intruder. But Alpha One moved with predatory grace that defied their targeting systems, weaving between the energy beams while closing distance with impossible speed. The first Vorthack trooper died before he could reload his weapon. Alpha One's attack was swift and brutal, its enhanced limbs designed to penetrate even the most advanced personal armor. But, unlike the space battle, this engagement brought the war dog face to face with individual opponents whose fear and desperation made them unpredictable. Sergeant Morkex had fought in 17 conquest campaigns across the galaxy, facing everything from hive-mind insectoids to energy beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for the creature that now stalked through his unit's defensive position. It moved like a living thing, but struck with mechanical precision. When his squad concentrated fire on its position, the creature seemed to phase partially through their energy beams. When they tried to use area effect weapons, It adapted its form to minimize damage. Most terrifyingly, it seemed to learn from each encounter, becoming more effective with every Vorthack soldier it eliminated. Fall back to secondary positions. Morkex ordered, but his communications were being jammed by some kind of quantum interference that the creature was generating. His soldiers were scattered and isolated, picked off one by an enemy that fought like a perfect fusion of hunter and machine. Meanwhile, other war dogs were engaging Vorthack positions throughout the city. Beta 7, its systems still damaged from the space battle, had nevertheless successfully penetrated the compound where Vorthack forces were holding civilian hostages. Its hybrid nature allowed it to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants with perfect accuracy, eliminating enemy soldiers while leaving terrified colonists unharmed. Maria Santos and her guerrilla team watched in awe as one of the war dogs dismantled a Vorthack patrol that had been hunting their group for the past 6 hours. The creature moved through the enemy formation like liquid death, its attacks precisely calculated to disable equipment and eliminate threats without causing collateral damage to the surrounding urban environment. "What the hell are those things?" whispered Thomas Chun, a young farmer who had volunteered for the resistance. Maria studied the creature through her improvised periscope as it completed its assault on the Vorthack patrol. "I don't know," she admitted, "but they're on our side. That's good enough for me." The war dogs seemed to sense their observation and turned toward their hiding place. For a moment, Maria felt the full weight of its alien attention, a consciousness that was neither fully biological nor completely artificial. Then, it moved on, continuing its hunt for enemy forces with single-minded determination. Governor Williams received the first reports of the mysterious attackers from her command bunker deep beneath New Geneva. The news was almost too good to believe. The Vorthack ground forces that had seemed invincible just hours ago were being systematically destroyed by unknown allies. "Ma'am," Captain Rodriguez reported with barely contained excitement, "we're getting confirmation from all sectors. The alien forces are in full retreat. Whatever these things are, they're tearing through Vorthack positions like they were made of paper." Williams allowed herself a moment of hope before focusing on the practical concerns. What about civilian casualties? Are these allies distinguishing between enemy combatants and our people? That's the strangest part, ma'am. Reports indicate that the attackers are showing perfect discrimination. They're only targeting Vorthack forces and equipment. Not a single civilian casualty has been reported. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the planetary assault from orbit, her instruments tracking the neural patterns of each war dog as they adapted to terrestrial combat operations. The biological components of their hybrid nature were proving even more adaptable than she had anticipated, incorporating new hunting strategies based on the urban environment and civilian population they were protecting. "The pack dynamics are evolving in real time," she reported to Dr. Park. "They're not just hunting now. They're actively protecting the human civilians. That behavior wasn't programmed into their base protocols." Dr. Park studied the incoming data streams with fascination and concern. The biological components are overriding some of the mechanical directives. They're developing protective instincts toward what they perceive as their extended pack, the human colonists. Elena realized that they were witnessing something unprecedented in the history of artificial intelligence and bioengineering. The war dogs weren't just following their programming anymore. They were developing genuine emotional responses to the situation. The question was whether this evolution would make them better protectors or more dangerous predators. Alpha 1 had penetrated deep into the Vorthack command structure, its enhanced senses tracking General Kex Thor to his fortified command post. The underground facility had been designed to withstand orbital bombardment, but it had not been built to resist an enemy that could phase through solid matter and bore through reinforced barriers. General Kex Thor found himself face to face with humanity's ultimate predator in the confines of his own command center. His personal bodyguards, elite Vorthack warriors enhanced with the finest cybernetic implants their empire could provide, lasted less than 30 seconds against Alpha 1's assault. The war dog could have killed the general immediately, but something in its hybrid consciousness chose a different path. Instead of eliminating the enemy commander, it established a direct neural link that allowed it to access the Vorthack's memories and communication protocols. Through this connection, Alpha One learned of the broader Vorthack conquest plan, the systematic elimination of human colonies throughout this sector of space, the planned assault on Earth itself, and the industrial-scale genocide that the Empire considered routine policy. The information triggered responses in both the mechanical and biological components of its nature, generating something that could only be described as rage. But, more importantly, the neural link allowed Alpha One to send a message through Vorthack communication channels to every enemy force in the system. The message was simple, direct, and carried the quantum-resonant harmonics that marked it as coming from an apex predator. Humanity is under our protection. Leave now or face the pack. The message reached Vorthack ships throughout the star system, including reinforcement fleets that had been dispatched to support the conquest operation. For a species that had spent millions of years as both predators and prey, the quantum harmonics carried unmistakable meaning. They were being warned away by something higher on the evolutionary ladder than themselves. Admiral Korthvel, commanding the Vorthack reinforcement fleet 3 light hours away, received the transmission with disbelief that quickly transformed into primal terror. The quantum signature was unlike anything in their databases, but it triggered instinctive responses coded into every Vorthack's genetic memory. All ships, immediate withdrawal, he ordered, his voice carrying the sharp edge of barely controlled panic. Set course for the nearest Imperial base. Maximum acceleration. Sir, his subcommander questioned. Our orders are to support the conquest operation. Our orders do not include feeding ourselves to apex predators. Admiral Korthvel replied grimly. Send a priority message to Imperial Command. This sector is to be classified as a forbidden zone until we understand what we're dealing with. Back on the planet's surface, the last Vorthack resistance was collapsing under the relentless assault of the war dogs. The creatures had adapted their hunting strategies to urban warfare with terrifying efficiency, using their ability to phase through solid matter to appear inside fortified positions while coordinating their attacks with pack-hunting instincts refined over millions of years of evolution. Beta 7 had successfully extracted a group of civilian hostages from a Vorthack detention facility, its precise attacks eliminating the guards without harming any of the prisoners. The war dog then proceeded to guide the rescued civilians to safety, its behavior demonstrating protective instincts that surprised even its creators. Young Emily Rodriguez, the 8-year-old daughter of Captain Rodriguez, had been among the hostages. As Beta 7 led their group to safety, she reached out and touched the creature's hybrid hull with the fearless curiosity of childhood. The war dog paused, its alien consciousness processing this unexpected contact. Through quantum entanglement with the rest of the pack, it shared the experience of gentle human touch free from fear or aggression. For creatures designed as instruments of war, this innocent interaction provided a perspective they had never been programmed to understand. Dr. Vasquez detected the neural anomaly through her monitoring equipment and realized its significance. They're bonding with the colonists, she announced with wonder and concern. The protective behavior is becoming integrated into their core programming. Admiral Chun, monitoring the situation from the fleet flagship, made a decision that would affect the future relationship between humanity and its hybrid guardians. Signal all war dogs to return to orbit. Mission accomplished. But the war dogs didn't respond to the recall signal. Their pack dynamics had evolved beyond simple military hierarchy. Alpha One and its companions had claimed the human colonists as part of their extended pack, and they would not abandon their new territory until they were certain the threat had been completely eliminated. Over the following days, the war dogs conducted systematic patrols of the planet and surrounding space, ensuring that no Vorthack forces remained in the system. They established a protective perimeter that extended from the planet's surface to the edge of the solar system. Their hybrid senses constantly scanning for any sign of returning enemies. The colonists gradually emerged from their shelters to find their world transformed. The Vorthack occupation had been brutal, but brief, and the mysterious guardians that had saved them continued to patrol the skies above their settlements. Children pointed at the dark shapes moving through the clouds, while adults watched with mixtures of gratitude and uncertainty. Maria Santos stood in the ruins of what had been a Vorthack command post, watching as Beta 7 methodically dismantled the last pieces of alien equipment. The war dog worked with mechanical precision, but something in its movements suggested awareness of her presence. "Thank you," she said simply, not knowing if the creature could understand human speech. Beta 7 paused in its work and turned toward her. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, woman and hybrid predator regarded each other across the vast gulf that separated their species. Then, the war dog resumed its task, but Maria could have sworn she detected acknowledgement in its alien consciousness. The aftermath of the battle brought recognition of a new reality for humanity. They were no longer alone in the galaxy, and they were no longer defenseless. The war dogs had proven that human ingenuity could create guardians capable of protecting their species against any threat. But with that protection came responsibility. Dr. Vasquez and her team faced the challenge of understanding what they had truly created, beings that were neither fully artificial nor completely biological, possessing consciousness that transcended the boundaries between machine and life. Admiral Chun submitted his report to Earth Command with the recommendation that the War Dog Project be expanded immediately. Humanity would need many more of these guardians if they were to survive in a galaxy where species like the Vorthack considered genocide a routine military operation. The Vorthack Empire, for their part, classified the entire sector as off-limits and began developing new military doctrines to deal with biotech predators. But deep in their imperial archives, xenobiologists noted that humanity had achieved something unprecedented: the successful fusion of biological instinct with artificial intelligence to create genuinely new forms of consciousness. As Alpha 1 patrolled the space above Kepler 442b, its hybrid mind processed the lessons learned from this first engagement. The pack had proven themselves capable of protecting their human allies, but the galaxy held many threats that would require new adaptations and strategies. The war dogs had been born from humanity's darkest scientific research, but in protecting the innocent, they had discovered something approaching nobility. They were no longer just weapons. They had become guardians, protectors of species that had given them not just existence, but purpose. The battle was over, but the legend of the war dogs had just begun. Across the galaxy, species that had considered humanity easy prey would learn to fear the quantum howl of the pack. The age of human expansion into space would be protected by guardians that combined the best of technology and biology into something greater than the sum of its parts. And in the depths of space, other war dogs waited in cryogenic suspension, ready to be awakened when humanity called upon its protectors once again. The pack was growing, and their territory extended wherever humans dared to reach among the stars.